So now we're going to begin, and I wanted to begin actually with a story. And this is a story about a person named Susan. Susan is 39 years old, and she lives in Tacoma. She has two kids, ages 5 and 9, and she and her husband Sam bought a small fixer-upper that they haven't quite been able to fix up yet. Her husband had been working in construction, but he slipped and hurt his back almost a year ago. He initially received workers' compensation, but he recently got a notice that they gave him too much money and that he actually owes some money back. Susan works at a gas station at night, and then she cleans houses during the day. And her gas station employer has been asking her to work even later into the night, but hasn't been paying her for those extra hours. Sam, meanwhile, has been becoming increasingly depressed because he hasn't been able to get back to work. And so recently, when Susan gets home from her gas station shift, he's usually pretty angry. He seems sort of pent up because he feels like it's unfair that she gets to be out all day, and he needs to stay home and deal with the house and the kids. Their arguing, unfortunately, has gone from occasional to frequent. And unfortunately, one time recently in a heated argument, her husband pushed her down to the couch and threatened to take the kids while she was at work. Lately, the school's been calling Susan at work and telling her that her 9-year-old has been getting into a lot of trouble acting out towards kids. They warned her that if his behavior doesn't start changing, he's going to be suspended. Susan's not only worried about that, but she's also worried because her son actually has been telling her that there's been 3 kids who've been being really mean to him, and so he's been trying to just eat lunch by himself to avoid any conflict. And then to make matters worse, their only car recently broke down, and their local mechanic told them that it needs a new engine. So taking public transportation was Susan's only option to get to her job, but the problem is it adds another 2 hours to her day. She's been trying to make it work, but has been getting late to work multiple times and got to a point where her boss at the gas station actually just let her go. And of course, he hasn't paid her for all that extra time she had been working. So as you would imagine, they have now fallen behind in their mortgage payments, and they just received a notice of foreclosure. And it was with that notice that Susan started calling around for a lawyer to look for some help. So this story is actually not uncommon, especially for people who are low or middle income. And in the 2015 Civil Legal Needs Study, which was commissioned by the Supreme Court, it tells us that Susan's story is not uncommon. The findings show that low-income households in Washington experience an average of 9.3 legal problems a year. And then if you're a domestic violence survivor, that number more than doubles, over 19 legal problems a year. The Civil Legal Aid Community, which is called the Alliance for Equal Justice, they recently adopted and started implementing something called the State Plan for the Delivery of Coordinated Legal Services to Low-Income People. And in this plan, they have 5 goals, as you'll see on the slide. One of the goal 3, centers on holistic client services. And specifically, the plan is encouraging for this plan, civil legal services attorneys to use holistic and client-centered approaches to address the complexity and the breadth of the legal needs that their client communities encounter. So today, that's what we're focusing on. We're going to be focusing on holistic client services and go a little deeper beyond the basics to really understand what does it mean to apply a holistic model to your practice. And then we'll end with a short discussion using about what it means to use this in your own practice. So before we get started and before I introduce our speakers, I want to first get a sense of who's joining us today. So I'm going to ask you to participate in a poll online that you should see. And if you can let us know what practice that you're currently working in. I have a list of possible practices that you might be in, whether you're a solo, you work in a small firm, medium, large, you're a civil legal aid attorney, public defender, prosecutor, you work for a government agency. So if you can fill out this poll, that would be great, so we have a sense of who all is out there. Give you a chance to mark your, I don't know if you're marking a bubble or letting us know. The computers are tabulating as I speak. 20 more seconds. Okay. And then just for folks who like to know what's next, I'm going to ask you another question for you to think about now is how many practice areas do you handle? So that's going to be the next poll. But for now, let's find out what kind of practices that people have.
We have solo private practice, 21%, approximately. Small private firm, 14%, 13.8. Medium private firm, 3.8%. Large private firm, 2.1%. Civil legal aid, 3.2%. Public defense, 1.2%. Prosecutor's office, 3.2%.
Great. All right, so it seems like we have a lot of solos, which is great, but then really in small firms and then a mix of others. So it sounds like we have a diverse group of people, so that's helpful for us to know. And then the next question that I previewed is how many practice areas do you handle in your practice? So do you just do family law or do you do family, estate planning, and housing? So if you could do this next poll and let us know how many areas of practice that you handle. Okay. It's happening. Do I need to tell a joke? Okay. Should I keep talking?
Yes.
Okay. I will keep talking.
I'll raise my hand.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and tell a joke. So the joke that I have is what's brown and sticky? A stick. Okay. Go ahead.
One area of practice, 42.7%. 2 to 4, 44.5%. 4 to 6, 5.5%. More than 6, 7.3%.
Great. Thank you. All right. So it does look like there are a fair amount of people who practice in more than one area. So that's also helpful to know. Okay. So now I'm going to move us to the next part of our program, which is to have our speakers, who I'll briefly introduce, just give us a 5-minute overview of their work, because as they're answering questions throughout our time today, you'll have an understanding of the perspective that they bring. So I'm going to briefly introduce all of them now, and then I'm going to turn it over to each of them to give that 5-minute overview. So a brief introduction. Next to me is Reedy Mukhopadhyay, and she's the legal director of Sexual Violence Legal Services based at the YWCA. And prior to coming to SVLS, Reedy worked at the Pierce County Department Assigned Counsel, and then also worked at the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. Reedy's worked with communities and individuals, including those with mental health and developmental disabilities, and also victims of commercial sexual exploitation. Next to Reedy is Joshua Trabig. Joshua is a civil consequences attorney at the King County Department of Public Defense. And prior to working at DPD, he worked in areas including disability law, employment, workers' compensation, fair housing, and environmental law. And then lastly, at the end, we have Catherine West. Catherine is a staff attorney at the Northwest Justice Project, and specifically with their medical legal partnership. And prior to working on a medical legal partnership, Catherine worked with homeowners facing foreclosure and seniors dealing with consumer housing and public benefit issues. So I'm really grateful to all three of our speakers today, not only because they offer a perspective of different areas of practice, but also different approaches and different organizations that they have worked with. So now I'm going to turn it over to Reedy to share an overview of her work.
Thank you, Diana. So my program is the Sexual Violence Legal Services, which is a program of the local YWCA. We're housed here downtown Seattle, but we provide direct representation in both King and Snohomish County, and we also provide a statewide legal line that survivors, attorneys, or advocates working with survivors can call us with questions about the legal process and a survivor's rights. We're a 6-attorney program, and a core component, which is one reason why I'm excited to be on this panel, a core component of our program is to be holistic and to be trauma-informed. And by holistic, in our program, what that means is that when a survivor is referred to us, we try to address all the legal needs that the survivor is presenting. So that can be employment, that can be housing, education. Title IX is a huge part of what we end up doing, immigration, civil protection orders, and also victims' rights in the criminal process. We don't represent in personal injury cases. The private sector has a lot of resources for victims who may be seeking representation in tort cases. And also with family law, we can provide consultations and limited legal services in family law, but there are so many other organizations that are better situated and have the expertise to provide family law services. Also, with our service model, besides direct representation, we obviously provide limited legal services, and then, as I mentioned before, the statewide hotline. So we're a 6-attorney program, and we're trying to represent as many survivors as we can, and I'm excited to hear from the rest of the panel about how they're, pushing when they're dealing with capacity.
Great. I'll turn it over to Joshua now.
Good afternoon. My name is Josh Trabig, and as Diana said, I work for the King County Department of Public Defense, and I have a fairly unique position there. My title is Collateral Consequences Civil Attorney, which does not mean a whole lot to most folks when they first hear it. Collateral consequences is a term that refers to all of the civil legal issues that may originate or stem from a criminal charge. So that can stem from everything like getting your driver's license suspended, losing your employment license, immigration issues. It runs quite a breadth. I think if I had to identify the number of practice areas, it would be 6 or more that I am engaged in. When you look at the Center on State Government's National Collateral Consequences database, there are over 48,000 civil consequences in Washington alone. And dealing with those is really the impetus for creating my position. It was a realization that representing someone in the defense of their criminal matter really is not enough. It's a recognition that came from the Bronx Public Defenders, and it came with the model of providing full in-house representation for indigent clients. At the Department of Public Defense, currently there are 3 of us across different divisions that are in many ways operating as one-person civil legal aid workshops. I see everything across the board. Yesterday I was meeting with Seattle School District personnel talking about the way that their disciplinary policies affect criminal charges as well as parents who are charged with crimes volunteering at their kids' school. This morning I was in an eviction defense hearing, and this afternoon I'll be going up to the jail to help someone with their Social Security disability benefits. So it's all over the board, very different every day. Many of these issues, though, can fall on one client. So I think being on this panel is something I'm really happy to participate in this conversation, because holistic representation is the entire model of what King County Public Defense is trying to do. And that comes from everything with having us actually doing this work, as well as an attempt to educate the public defenders that we work with to recognize these issues. Public defenders, as I've come to learn, are extremely good at what they do with criminal public defense, but they're not even aware of many of the issues that are civilly related. So I have both work within the organization to help educate public defenders as well as the actual client work that I do. It's been an opportunity also to get greatly engaged with the rest of the community because my position is so unique. As far as I know, there's only one other jurisdiction in the state that is practicing this model of public defense. So oftentimes when I appear in court, the judge is surprised why they're getting a public defender in front of them at all, because this isn't part of what public defense generally consists of. I'm really happy to see generally that this is the model that public defense is moving toward altogether. It's certainly a holistic representation model where we recognize that not one of these issues stands in a vacuum. As Diana mentioned in the Civil Legal Needs Survey found, there are compounded issues, particularly for the civil legal aid community where our clients are typically low income, and poverty compounds all of the legal issues that they may be facing. So I think this is a really great model to be a part of. I have to say, I want to preface any of the rest of my comments that I have the fortune of working for a very large organization. There's some 450 employees in my department. So recognizing that there's a strong contingent of solo or small practitioners, I realize that a lot of the things that that we may be doing are great models for a large department, but I think we all have the opportunity to take parts of holistic representation no matter the size of our firm. So I'm excited to be on this panel.
My name is Catherine West. I'm a staff attorney with the Northwest Justice Project, and I work on a medical legal partnership which does focus on holistic legal services. So medical legal partnerships are a very specific form of providing service to clients, and we embed lawyers into the healthcare setting with the understanding that healthcare does not just exist in the clinic or in a hospital, that patients, when they return home, they're still facing all of the same stressors or traumas or toxins that they were facing before they went into the healthcare setting. And so this is a way for us to be included with medical providers as just another referral source, just like any other specialist. And so we work on health-harming legal needs, and we seek to improve the health of patients that are referred to us by our medical providers. One of our, many of the resources that I'll reference are available at the National Center for Medical Legal Partnerships, and their website is available on this slide. They state that 1 in 6 people need legal assistance in order to be healthy. And so we try and address the social determinants of health, which include education, access to sufficient income, safe and affordable housing, safe communities, safe families, as well as access to sufficient medical care. So our model, which is called the Washington Medical Legal Partnership, works with medical providers at Harborview Hospital, Odessa Brown Children's Clinic, Seattle Children's Hospital, and then we have a small contract with Valley Cities Counseling and Consultation. So those 4 medical partners are able to refer patients directly to us, usually using a consent form, and then we reach out directly to patients to talk about their health-harming legal needs. Most of the work that we do is done in-house at Northwest Justice Project, although because we have some unfortunate federal restrictions on the types of clients that we're able to serve, we do also rely on the private bar to assist mostly undocumented immigrants. And so the types of cases that we do refer out are parents who are seeking guardianship or need surrogate decision-making for their now adult disabled children, as well as families who have immigration issues or need assistance. And the way that that comes up is sometimes children have very significant health needs and are getting excellent care at one of the medical partners with whom we work, but if they were to have to return home, or if a parent were deported, that it would be a very significant impact on the patient, the child. So we rely on the private bar to assist us with both immigration and guardianship cases involving undocumented persons. The goal of the medical legal partnership is to work on a tiered model, so the base of which is for us to provide trainings to medical providers. And the idea is that medical providers see and hear a lot more issues than what clients present to us at the Legal Services Organization. And also, particularly parents dealing with young children, are very willing and motivated to follow through to improve the health of their children in a way that they may not recognize, some of the other issues that are existing in their lives are also impacting their children's health and their own health. So we do a lot of trainings, both at Harborview Hospital and at Children's Hospital, as well as our smaller partner Valley Cities, to help medical providers understand the issues that low-income clients face and some of the steps that they can take to help the patients address those issues and then eventually refer to us if necessary. And then, the middle part of the pyramid is for us to work on cases directly with patient families. And we do that in a number of arenas very similar to what Josh described: guardianship, Medicaid, powers of attorney, a little bit of family law, some domestic violence, a lot of medical benefits, some housing, so sort of a wide range of cases. And then we're always sort of looking to see, is there a systemic advocacy piece? Is there something going on for one family or for a number of families that if we were to address affirmatively, that we could get some relief for a large group of people? And so the top of the pyramid is that systemic advocacy. And a recent example of some systemic advocacy that we worked on involved obtaining a very specific therapy for children who have autism. And it was a therapy that initially was not covered by Medicaid, and then after a lawsuit, Medicaid did cover this very important therapy for children with autism. And now some more recent information that we've been receiving from families are the difficult time that they have finding a provider who will accept Medicaid for the Medicaid-eligible kids. So in other words, if you're on private insurance and you seek this ABA therapy, you're able to get into a provider, within about a month. But if you have Medicaid, you might have to wait 2 years. And so obviously that's a big systemic problem, a big failure, and that children who need this therapy need it, when it's prescribed and not 5 years later when it might be a little bit too late. And so when we're thinking about training medical providers, we use a mnemonic called I help, which just helps to trigger them to think about whether this is an issue that the medical legal partnership might work on. And so these are all the social determinants of health that I referenced earlier: income, housing, education, legal status, and personal and family stability. So we give out to all of the medical providers a little yellow business card sized with the I help and some information about the medical legal partnership, again, to encourage them to think deeper about what's happening in their patient's life and also to think through referring patients to us.